look in her eyes, the music begins to play.
Imagine stepping back into a time when music wasn't just a soundtrack. It was a movement. The 1970s gave us bands that defined eras, reshaped genres, and created timeless anthems. From the thunder of hard rock to the emotional depths of ballads, these bands were more than musicians, they were legends. But what if they came back? What would their sound mean in today's world? Which of these legendary bands would you bring back if you could? Led Zeppelin, a reference to rock royalty, and sitting at the throne is Led Zeppelin, brought together with the bewitching vocals of Robert Plant, the mind-blowing guitar riffs of Jimmy Page, the versatility of John Paul Jones on bass lines, and the thunderous drumming of John Bonham. This band was no ordinary rock band, it was a phenomenon. Their live performances were of high energy, a display of raw, unmatched talent. Songs like Stairway to Heaven went beyond hits. They were cultural milestones that embodied the mystique and power of 70s rock. Albums like Led Zeppelin IV didn't just sell millions, they became blueprints for rock's future. However, behind their meteoric rise always lurked a tinge of tragedy in the band's story, with John Bonham's untimely death in 1980 bringing their journey to an abrupt end. But imagine they got back together today. Would they be able to reimagine their sound in a way that would speak to both the old fans and a new generation? Or would the raw, unapologetic style rock an industry ruled by digital beats and synthesized rhythms? Led Zeppelin's legacy lives on as new generations discover them. Listening through their discography, it's hard not to wonder what heights they could scale, returning to the stage once more with the instruments of gods in their hands. Fleetwood Mac. Fleetwood Mac is more than just a band. It's a musical soap opera. Stevie Nicks, Lindsey Buckingham, Christine McVie, John McVie, and Mick Fleetwood were the members whose personal dramas seeped into their art, imbuing it with the emotional intensity that fans couldn't turn away from. Their classic album Rumours bathes in that dynamic, a pop masterpiece born of heartbreak, betrayal, and love. Every song told some kind of story, from the haunting dreams to the defiant go-your-own-way. In a way, Fleetwood Mac blended rock, pop, and folk into something that felt timeless yet deeply personal. But success always comes at a price. The band literally was always on the verge of imploding, with creative differences and romantic entanglements adding to the chaos. But can they recapture the magic today? The band has had sporadic reunions, but tensions often flare. Would a full reunion reignite that spark or revive those same heartaches? And more importantly, would today's fans welcome their emotionally charged style in a world of bite-sized pop hits? The music of Fleetwood Mac has never really gone away. From movie soundtracks to viral TikTok moments, their legacy just continues to inspire. But the question is, can a modern incarnation of Fleetwood Mac possibly capture that magic mix of beauty and chaos? Or should they just leave their own legacy untouched by the drama in which they've been? The Eagles. The Eagles didn't just make music, but the songs they produced became anthems, painting vivid images of America's heart. Known for blending country with rock in a perfect blend, the band wrote songs capturing the spirit of an era and reflecting universal emotions. From the introspective Desperado to the iconic Hotel California, their discography reads like a best-of collection. With Glenn Frey, Don Henley, Joe Walsh, and others leading it, the Eagles had mastered harmonies that felt both intimate and expansive. There was this thing in their music that drew listeners in, made them feel like they were part of the story. Success, however, brought along its very own set of problems. Increasingly unbearable tensions finally broke the band up in 1980, leaving fans wanting more. The Eagles reformed in 1994 for their Hell Freezes Over tour, which demonstrated there was still great interest in the group. However, following the death of Glenn Frey in 2016, the band lost one of the most distinctive voices that defined it. Would they be able to recapture their magic with a new generation of musicians? Or would their sound feel like a bygone era? Their music still lives with us, even after decades. It brings moments of nostalgia and solace with its melodies in this sometimes chaotic world. But does such soft but strong-sounding music have space within today's fast-paced musical environment? Perhaps the Eagles do have one more flight left in them, ready to remind the world why they'll always be iconic. The Clash. The Clash were more than a band. They were a movement. Born from the incendiary heart of London's punk revolution, Joe Strummer, Mick Jones, Paul Simonon, and Topper Headon channeled their vital energy into music that wasn't afraid to challenge the status quo. They got tagged with the name "The Only Band That Matters" for a reason, because they did. Their early work, like White Riot, roared with the rebellious spirit of punk, and The Clash didn't stop there. They broke even more boundaries with albums like London Calling, which fused punk with reggae, ska, and rockabilly. Tracks like Train in Vain and Should I Stay or Should I Go showed that they had the ability to innovate without losing their edge. But it wasn't all plain sailing. Internal conflicts and Topper Headon's departure due to addiction began to fracture the band. Yet their influence never dissipated. Decades on, their music still provides a litmus test for socially conscious rock. Now imagine The Clash getting back together today. In this high-politics environment, would their fearless comments have a voice? Would the raw sound of the band cut through the slick production in music today? The Clash were always so much more than just a band. They held a mirror to society. In a world hungry for authenticity and boldness, could their return, a re-clash, ignite another cultural revolution? One thing's for certain. The spirit of The Clash isn't shackled by time, and their legacy still runs through the very veins of punk rock, Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd didn't just make music, they created whole worlds of sound. The band changed what rock music could be with Roger Waters, David Gilmour, Richard Wright, and Nick Mason. Their groundbreaking album, The Dark Side of the Moon, wasn't just a record, it was an experience that used strange rhythms to explore ideas about time, greed, and mental health. Their next album, The Wall, was different because it mixed music and stories in a new way. Their mastery of combining haunting words with complex instrumentation was shown on songs like Comfortably Numb and Another Brick in the Wall. Pink Floyd never went with the flow. Instead, they often started trends decades before they were popular. Even though the band was successful, their path wasn't easy. They broke up because they couldn't agree on their work, especially Roger Waters and David Gilmour. Even though they've gotten back together a few times, the dream of a full-on Pink Floyd comeback is still out there. But what if they got back together today? Could Pink Floyd take back their place as innovators in a music business ruled by streaming services and hit singles? In this day and age of endless technology and imagination, would they come up with new ways to push the limits of sound? Pink Floyd's music is still a great example of how powerful goals and vision can be. As people listen to their musical works, they can't help but wonder, could they still surprise us with something brand new after all these years? The Doors. The Doors were more than just a rock band, they were a mystery. This Los Angeles band, led by the mysterious and captivating Jim Morrison, added poetry and mystery to rock music. The Doors made a sound that was both hypnotic and new. Ray Manzarek played keyboards, Robbie Krieger played guitar, and John Densmore played drums. Songs like Light My Fire and Riders on the Storm showed how they could mix jazz, blues, and rock to make something completely their own. But Morrison himself was what really made the Doors stand out. Known as the Lizard King, he was more than just a singer. He was also an artist, a rebel, and a counterculture icon. The band's rise was very fast, but it didn't last long. When Morrison died too soon, at age 27 in 1971, it was the end of an era. The other members of the Doors played for a short time, but Morrison was essential to the band's magic. Still, they have had a huge impact. Could the Doors start a new wave of anarchy in a world where people often feel like they can't be themselves? Could Morrison's poetic and sometimes sexy words fit into the music scene today? As their haunting melodies continue to captivate new generations, it's impossible not to wonder. If the Doors came back, would they start a new era in music or serve as a poignant memory of a time when rock really felt alive? The Ramones. Not only did the Ramones play punk rock, they were punk rock. At a time when music was getting more complicated, Joey, Johnny, Dee Dee, and Tommy Ramone took it all the way down. Their simple, high-energy style hit like a lightning bolt, starting the punk movement with a sound as rough and savage as their black leather jackets. Songs like I Wanna Be Sedated and Blitzkrieg Bop became instant hits because they perfectly captured the wild spirit of teens and young adults. With their 2-minute heavy songs, the Ramones rejected the polished mainstream and gave people who were unhappy a voice. Fans were left gasping for air and asking for more at their live shows, which were packed with non-stop energy. The Ramones trip wasn't easy, though. There were problems within the group, personality clashes, and they weren't very popular when they were at their best, which left holes in their reputation. Still, it's impossible to deny their power. They were a big part of punk as we know it, and every garage band that plays 3-chord songs still feels the effects of them. Now picture what the world would be like if the Ramones came back to the scene now. Would their honest, rough sound be able to cut through the smooth, perfect sound of modern music? It looks like the time is right for a punk revival. Could they bring back the rebellious spirit? The Ramones showed that less is more sometimes, and the world could use some of that magic again. The Creedence Clearwater Revival, CCR. As Creedence Clearwater Revival, CCR, put it, they made swamp rock sounds popular in the 1970s. With John Fogerty's distinctive voice leading the way, their songs became the soundtrack of Americana, making people think of bayous and small towns in the South. Songs like Proud Mary, Bad Moon Rising, and Fortunate Son weren't just fun to listen to. They also spoke to the social and political issues of the time. Their music sounded easy, but it had a lot of hidden meanings. It was easy for CCR to mix rock, country, and blues into a delicious mix that was both familiar and new. They stood out because they could tell stories through song, and every hit won over hearts and minds. But behind the scenes, things were getting worse. Both the band's rapid rise and fall were very dramatic. There were creative differences and problems between band members, especially John Fogerty and the rest of the band. This led to a nasty breakup. For years, the chance of getting back together seemed as cloudy as the water that their songs so clearly described. Could CCR put aside their decades-old grudges and play together one last time? Imagine how magical it would be to hear Have You Ever Seen the Rain, played live by the singers whose voices made it famous. Their music has been loved for many years, but a real return could bring their swamp rock history full circle. The riffs of CCR are still being played on jukeboxes and on playlists, and fans can only wish for a comeback that would show the world why their sound is so famous. Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath wasn't just a band, they were a natural force. A darker, heavier sound was created by Tony Iommi's down-tuned riffs, Ozzy Osbourne's haunting singing, Geezer Butler's evocative lyrics, and Bill Ward's pounding drums. This sound became heavy metal. From their self-titled debut to legendary records like Paranoid, Black Sabbath's music was a loud protest against the everyday. War Pigs, Iron Man, and Paranoid were not just songs, they made statements. The eerie tones and end-of-the-world themes of their songs made people feel very uneasy in the turbulent 1970s. They weren't afraid to break the rules, which led to the creation of a style that would affect many bands and start a worldwide metal movement. But their trip was anything but easy. Ozzy left the band in 1979 because of problems inside the band, drug abuse, and problems with the music. The band kept going with different lineups, but the magic of the first 4 members seemed hard to recreate. So, what would happen to the heavy metal scene today if Black Sabbath came back? Their rough, relentless sound could feel like a loud wake-up call in a world full of smooth production and synthesized beats. Could they get younger people interested in the darker, edgier side of rock? Black Sabbath didn't just make a style of music, they made a way of thinking. Their history is very important, and the thought of them taking back their proper place on stage gives any metalhead chills. Queen. Queen were more than just a band. They were an event. Queen changed rock music with a theatrical flair. Freddie Mercury's stage appearance was unmatched, Brian May's guitar riffs were legendary, Roger Taylor's drums were thunderous, and John Deacon's bass lines were steady. Their music went beyond categories, mixing rock, opera, and pop in a way that was truly amazing. Anthems that will never go out of style include Bohemian Rhapsody, We Are the Champions, and Don't Stop Me Now. Each one is filled with feeling and grandeur. Freddie Mercury wasn't just a lead singer, he was a phenomenon. His charisma, vocal range, and fearless individuality captivated viewers. But Queen's story was full of both happiness and sadness. When Freddie died too soon in 1991, it left a hole that could never be fully filled. Fans still long for the magic of the original group, even though the band has kept going with guest singers like Adam Lambert. Is it possible for Queen to come back in full? Could their unmatched creativity and energy hook a new generation? There will never be another Freddie, but the band's music continues to bring people together and inspire new ones. Queen didn't just play, they told people what to do. We can't help but wonder what new heights they would reach if Freddie Mercury were still alive today as their famous hits play on the radio and in concert halls. Queen's music still makes us stomp our feet and sing along, so maybe she is already immortal in some way. Leonard Skinner. The band Leonard Skinner was more than just a band, they were Southern rock. They made a genre that hasn't been matched since with their dirty riffs, soulful songs, and unwavering love for their roots. Hit songs like Free Bird and Sweet Home Alabama were more than just hits, they were statements. Great guitar solos by Free Bird could get a crowd of people up on their feet, and Sweet Home Alabama became a national song for Southern pride and strength. But there was sadness in their story. 3 band members, including lead singer Ronnie Van Zant, died in the terrible plane crash in 1977. Even though they were sad, Leonard Skinner's members kept going, showing that their music and energy could not be stopped. Imagine their sound in the music scene today, a mix of honest stories and virtuosic instrumentation that stands out among overproduced tracks. Would their unfiltered style appeal to people who want to be real? Could their message of strength spark a new wave of rockers? Many bands today still say that Leonard Skinner was a big effect on them. Their skill at telling stories through Southern rock is still a standard in the music world. Fans who want to hear the unforgettable strains of Free Bird one more time are filled with hope at the thought of a full reunion that would bring that sound back to life. Genesis. Genesis did more than just play music, they made worlds. In the beginning, Peter Gabriel's dramatic stories made shows feel like real experiences. He turned progressive rock into a theater art form by dressing up in fancy clothes and telling complicated stories. Albums like The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway were hard to listen to because they had complicated themes and new musical arrangements. After Gabriel left, Phil Collins took over and made Genesis a pop-rock powerhouse. Songs like Land of Confusion and Invisible Touch showed how the band could change without losing their character. Collins's drumming and the band's talent for music made Genesis known as both the pioneers of progressive rock and the makers of hit songs. Gen Zers might like their modern sound. Could Genesis's complex stories hold the attention of listeners today, in a time when short-form material and instant gratification are the norm? It's possible because of how they've influenced current artists. Genesis wasn't just a band. They were a movement that changed the way rock music could be. People who listen to their music are encouraged to go deeper and become part of a story that is told with every note. Fans keep listening to Genesis's albums and dream of seeing the band play together again, even if it's just for one more big show. Abba. In the 1970s, Abba brought happiness, sparkle, and contagious energy. Their catchy tunes were the only thing that matched their shiny costumes and huge stage presence. Songs like Take a Chance on Me, Dancing Queen, and Mamma Mia did more than just top the charts. They became important parts of culture. The genius songwriting of Benny Andersson and Bjorn Ulvaeus, along with the duets of Agnetha Falskog and Annie Frid Lyngstad, made ABBA's sound unmistakable. Their music will never go out of style because they could perfectly blend feeling into pop. When it came to Abba songs, there was one for every mood, from the happy dancing queen to the sad the winner takes it all. Fans were left wanting more after they broke up in 1982, and while their latest reunion brought new music, it only made people want to see them perform live again. Could Abba bridge the gap between people who miss the 1970s and people who love pop music today? Modern artists constantly use and honor their work, so it's clear that they are still having a big impact. Abba's music isn't just a thing of the past. It's a way for people of different groups to connect with each other. The world still dances to their music, so imagine how magical it would be to see them work together again. Abba changed more than just an age. They changed what pop music could be, and the world is always ready for more. In the 1970s, bands did more than just make music. They shaped our society and feelings. Every group we looked into left behind something that is still important today. Now it's your turn. Which band's comeback would make the world go crazy the most? Leave your ideas in the box below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to stay tuned for more in-depth looks at some of music's most famous artists. Keep reading. There is a lot more to find.